Okay, and we are live on the Gamification Revolution. Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Gabe Zickerman. It's so excited to see you. And there's Tim Vandenberg joining us from Hesperia in Southern California. Hello, Tim.
Hi, everybody.
So excited to see you guys. I've been away for a few weeks, but you wouldn't know it if you don't follow us live. But if you are following us live, welcome. Remember, you've got to log in with one of your social media accounts to be able to chat, and you can ask questions. You can even come on screen with us. It's so exciting. If you're not following us live, of course, welcome. Thanks for downloading the podcast or watching the video podcast. It's great to see you here. No matter how you come to the Gamification Revolution, we're excited to have you. So Tim, we've known each other for a few years. We had you at G Summit a couple of years ago for an amazing session, which I'll just preface for everybody by saying I think we actually, have the link. We'll share the link with you a little bit later on. You did this session at G Summit that had me teary-eyed, had lots of people teary-eyed. We talk about this talk a lot. Um, Tell us what it is that your kind of experience with bringing games to the classroom and your experience as a teacher. How did this whole thing come together for you?
Okay, well, um, I've always kind of used gamification concepts in my classroom without even realizing it, like many teachers already do, even though they've never heard of gamification. Um, I had tried different games like Yahtzee and Rubik's Cubes, and those are great, but also points for the kids and teams and rankings and privileges, things like that. But then my whole world changed when I started using Monopoly as a teaching tool in my classroom. It was winter of 2008, so January 2008. I decided I'm gonna train some of my top students, the gifted students, which Gabe, some of your research was in early on, gifted
Hmm.
students, and train them uh, to take them to a local charity Monopoly tournament. And so we read the books, we studied the math and the strategies and practiced the skills for 3 months. So I knew these kids like knew how to play. I just didn't want them to go down there and get embarrassed by other moms and dads. And I wanted them to be polite and knowledgeable. And after the first round of the tournament, one of my sixth graders runs up to me and says, "Mr. Vandenberg, guess what? I just defeated the first ever Monopoly world champion." And so I was totally
Wow.
blown away. How often does that happen? I realized dice is part of the game, but I knew she knew how to play. If the kid, if that guy was going to lose to a kid, it was going to be one of my kids on the day. I didn't even know that all these pros were, planning on being there until we showed up. And eventually that girl got second place in the whole tournament with all these other US level players on the scene. So we decided to take this up a notch. We said, hey, how about we invite the reigning United States national champion, Mr. Matt McNally, a great player, a great guy from Las Vegas, and he drove all the way out to California, and he played on camera with superintendents of the district and of the whole county, and video cameras rolling. And this guy played this girl and two other top-notch kids in my classroom, Monopoly, and this girl beat the reigning United States national champion. So I thought, wow, this is really working. This is cool. And all the while, the kids are learning math. Their mental math skills are going up. Their understanding of expected value and return on investment and financial literacy is going through the roof. They're understanding terms like mortgage and dividend and investments and home loans, because all those cards are in the game if you read the cards.
Well,
So,
can I ask you a question
yeah,
about that? Actually, just briefly, just to interrupt.
sure.
So it sounds so obvious when you say that, like Monopoly's full of math concepts,
Right.
but was that always obvious to you? I know that you're a player of it, and that's how we found you. Was in that great movie Under the Boardwalk. But is it obvious that Monopoly is a great math teaching tool? And if it's so obvious to you, how do other people see that?
Well, the sticking point, because I had considered Monopoly before, the sticking point is most people think Monopoly takes forever. And the reason is because they don't play by the rules. For example, There's no rule that says that you win the lottery, win $500 or more when you land on free parking. And so what that does by making that new house rule, what that does is it injects money into circulation among the players, and no one ever goes bankrupt. Well, how fun is that if the game takes 12 hours, 12 weeks, 12 months, whatever? I literally have talked to people who play games that lasted 3 months. And to me, that's not fun because we like to have lots of winners, lots of games. Let's let everybody have a chance to win. So when I play with my students, we play at a very high level. Our game is literally done in 40 minutes.
So is it, but so what is it about like finding the math in Monopoly that what is it uniquely about you that enables you to kind of connect the dots? And I know it's hard for you to project outward, but why don't more, I guess, why don't more teachers see the opportunity to teach with kind of existing games and existing structures like this?
Well, it starts with you need to understand the current standards that you're required to teach, and then start looking for those standards in products, games on the shelf. So because I understand, I've taught grades 5 through 12. I could I tutor all the way up through college, calculus, whatever. So I understand where the kids are going. And for example, the concept of expected value is all over in Monopoly. And that's a skill that in America kids are learning in like 9th, 10th, 11th grade. They're like, 14, 15, 16, 17 years old when they're learning that. And I want my kids to be ready for that. So with Monopoly, I saw all these skills. There's data analysis, mean, median, mode, and range, and outliers. There's a probability, compound probability. There's just so much in Monopoly, so much math. It was just a perfect fit. Like Yahtzee has like one skill, probability. That's it.
Right.
Rubik's Cube has one skill, combinatorics, and it's good, but not like Monopoly.
You make it sound a little bit like all the kids do is sit around and play Monopoly with you, but it's actually something kind of different. What's it really like in your Monopoly classroom or your Monopoly class?
Yeah.
What's actually happening?
Well, it looks like a normal class, except the class is gamified with points and motivation, privileges and statuses, and I have a class cash system. You give the kids cash for doing well on tests, and I pay tutors to tutor other kids with my class cash. If the kid they tutor does well, then the tutor gets paid if the kid does well on the test. So all kinds of rewards and privileges that they could use that to go buy, school supplies with, or sit with a buddy, or buy no homework for themselves. So my class is gamified top to bottom, even on the days we're not playing Monopoly or even mentioning Monopoly. But when a skill in the math book covering the standards can apply to Monopoly, we will stop and practice that skill using Monopoly. So for example, yesterday we were studying the patterns of rent growth horizontally across the board and vertically within one title deed, like say Boardwalk. And we were creating algebraic expressions, the rent equals, 2 times X plus this. And you can predict most rents based on all these different algebraic expressions. So, but usually it just looks like a normal math class, but it's really fun because I've got dice out there rolling to randomly pick kids, an 8-sided die and a 4-sided die based on table and seat number. And I let the whole class wager class points on if they think my dice can pick somebody who will know the answer. So there's all kinds of exciting things going on that's totally gamified that I didn't know was gamification until you found me.
One kind of interesting thing about it is in the context of Monopoly specifically, is that Monopoly is really cheap. And often a lot of what people talk about, right, when they talk about gamification in the classroom, especially the examples are like these big pieces of software and really complicated things. Can you speak to a little bit, folks who are thinking about how to bring lower cost gamification into the mix, or particularly in learning? What are some bits of advice or ideas you might have about that?
Okay. First of all, find what you love. And I know Monopoly is $10 a box, and that covers 4 to 5 kids right there. So in a class of say 30-ish, you're looking at 8 boxes of Monopoly for $80. you're going to have highly engaging educational activities for years and years. It's not consumable, like a workbook you got to throw away and buy a new set for the next year. Um, so find what you love, and you're going to, if you choose what gamified tools like Monopoly that you love, you can start finding um, resources or businesses or companies or grants that will pay for that if it's expensive. Or, I mean, Monopoly, $10 a box, you're good to go for an extremely low price. I can't tell you how expensive most bad educational games are. It's sad.
Yeah, and they're also bad, right? So there's both
Yeah,
of
they're
those
bad.
different
They smell like an
elements
educator
together.
wrote them. Yeah.
Yeah. So have you ever taken your kind of curriculum for Monopoly and kind of like written it up so folks
I
can kind of
have.
consume, so educators can consume that?
Um, the thing with Monopoly is that Hasbro owns the rights to Monopoly. Okay? So I have written my own curriculum, but any distribution of that needs to go through Hasbro, and I'm not at liberty to talk about any more about that. Um, so it's
Hopefully we
all
can
up to
convince
them.
them.
What?
Hopefully we can convince them to follow your lead.
If people start saying we would love an educational program for Monopoly, they know who to talk to because um, I just can't say anymore. But
Wow, that got yeah. Hopefully we can get some. We'll get some Hasbro execs on the air and grill them on why we don't have a Monopoly in every classroom. So tell us a little bit about, because we skipped over it. So let's go back and talk a little bit about what the outcomes have been for you. What have you seen in your
okay.
classroom as a result? What effects does this kind of method of teaching, not only teaching with Monopoly, but teaching in the gamified environment that your classroom is? What kind of results have you had?
Okay. First of all, as a teacher, I can tell the kids are totally learning the math skills that we're practicing, which is a wide variety, at a very, very high level. When you can sit there toe to toe against, I had one girl who, in one game, played against the U.S. champion, the first ever world champion, and another U.S. finalist, and she defeated all three. And then Matt McNally, the U.S. champion, said, "Tim, that was the best junior player I've ever played against." So when kids can use their math in a real life high stress situation, then you know they're learning the skills. Okay, so there's that anecdotal evidence. Second of all, their district and state test scores, which are what matters to principals and the school boards running the school district, those have been going through the roof. In 2007, I thought this was good back then. I had 10 kids scoring advanced, which is the highest level on the California state math test. And that was good. I was like, yeah, 10 kids, they're advanced. They're like, ooh, college bound. And that's great because I have a very low socioeconomic student base to work with. You know, most of these kids are coming from not very well off families, not very stable
Right.
families. So in 2008, after using Monopoly and having like a Monopoly morning class before school and so on, we went from 10 students to 19 students. We almost doubled our number of students. In 2009, we had 27 students scoring advanced. And in 2010, we had 37 students scoring advanced on the California state math test. Now, things have totally
Awesome.
changed because of the Common Core. Those old state math tests are gone now. So where every school is starting at ground zero all over again. And I'm really looking forward to how the results will come, how the results will show once they start publishing the new state test scores, because Common Core is all about project-based learning, real-life learning, not book and paper, but getting into something, a project, and really analyzing it, collaborating together, and discussing it and discovering inside of it. And this Monopoly Academy that I run, my principal is so excited. It's project-based learning. It's totally taking something that kids care about. Who doesn't want to know how to defeat their family for the rest of their life in Monopoly? And then learn math while doing that.
So the way that we originally found your work actually was through this documentary called Under the Boardwalk, and it's monopolydocumentary.com, which I happen to like a lot as a movie. I like competitive kind of context documentaries. And one of the things in this doc is that you yourself are a competitive Monopoly player. So did you, so as somebody who obviously likes to play this kind of game, you obviously there's something in your brain that's sort of switched on about it. Can you talk about the differences between how you have to translate the competition element of Monopoly, where it's, it's a pretty competitive game, and certainly the way that you play it as a professional, would be pretty competitive. How do we translate that for the classroom? How, if we translate it at all?
Well, first of all, the beauty of Monopoly is that it rewards um, respectful play. If you're a jerk in Monopoly, because a lot of high-level competitive games and sports, are one-on-one, and you can just be a jerk and still win. The killer player type from Bartle. Um, but with Monopoly, if you're not polite and respectful to all players, then everybody will just gang up on you and make sure that you lose. Nobody wants a jerk to win. So it rewards polite, professional, respectful negotiation and collaborative play. So in the movie that you watched, all four players in the U.S. and world Final Four table uh, were very polite people, but they were highly intelligent, very intense, very alert, had excellent social negotiation skills. And so the competitive side translates well for kids. I'm not teaching kids to be competitive jerks. I'm teaching them to be win-win negotiation winners for life, so that when they go into the business world or whatever career they're looking into, they're going to be able to work with people and collaborate and problem solve so that everybody wins. They'll just make sure they're always getting the upper hand, which is always good in Monopoly.
Is that a given though? I mean, I've seen people be super frustrated playing it. I mean, I've played it since I was a little kid.
Uh-huh.
Is it a given? Don't you find? Just putting the game into your classroom, does it not produce some behavioral side effects that maybe are negative, or do you view those as teachable moments? How do you handle the
Those are,
kid who's
yeah,
just
oh
like,
yeah,
ah, screw you?
yeah. The kid who does that is his peers ostracize him or her. And then I have a little sidebar conversation and say, look, you got to learn to work with others, because if you can't handle sitting with three kids your age and working through problems and dealing with a bad roll of the dice or a trade negotiation that didn't go well, if you can't deal with that, you can't deal with life. And so let's keep practicing this. Let's talk about strategies where you can counter offer something a little bit better that helps you, but still is of interest to them, and that kind of thing. So those turn into teachable moments. And so what Monopoly does is it exposes um, which kids need that social help, so that I'm not only teaching math, I'm also teaching business skills, financial literacy skills, but most importantly, I'm teaching interpersonal life skills so that the kid can win at Monopoly, but also win at life.
Can you, I know Lori has this question, which we've sort of talked about a little bit, which is other than math, what else is Monopoly really applicable for? And I want to just
Right.
add one extra layer to this question for you, which is, are any of the other teachers in your school using it or the similar concepts to teach anything else there in your school?
Well, the two other sixth grade teachers, they like to have Monopoly reward days. I've trained them to be pretty good Monopoly players, very good actually. And the principal, every principal I've had since this started has been very on board. In fact, we might be um, we might be incorporating this business financial literacy, business and leadership side as a new theme to the whole school, not just because of Monopoly, but it certainly fits in well. Um, and so the other teachers at my grade level are very supportive. And as part of my reward system, I let them send their best kids to my Monopoly Academy classes as well. So
Cool.
I make sure everybody has a chance to be involved.
And what about some of those other contexts? Like one of the fascinating things that many people don't know about Monopoly, and if they do watch the documentary, you'll learn this as I did, that originally the game was designed as an anti-capitalist teaching tool. So
Right.
it actually was originally structured to literally, if you think about the name of it and the way the game plays, over time, when you play Monopoly, what ends up happening is one person has all the money and everyone else is bankrupt, which is sort
Right.
of a story about the downfall of the
Capitalism.
capitalist system
Right.
or its weaknesses. Couldn't we also use this to teach other kind of social science concepts? Like, wouldn't it be a great way to talk about things like the Great Depression, stock
Oh, yeah.
market crashes, right? Competitiveness in the economy.
Yeah, Monopoly was first published by Parker Brothers during the Great Depression, a few years after the stock market crash, 1935. And so this game was so popular partly because this was the only cash most people could ever get a hold of was Monopoly money. And so within a year, it became part of the whole national culture. Everybody knew what Monopoly was. So kids love to have cash, and sometimes adults who are cash poor certainly love to play Monopoly too because it gives them a chance to dream and think what they would do if they had the money.
Do you, I guess one question that I have is sort of like, when we first met in 2012, and I'll make sure that I'll link to your talk and your Twitter accounts up here for everybody so they can watch, follow along with you. When we first met, you came out in 2012 and you gave this great talk. I just thought, heck, by now, a couple of years later, maybe 3 years later, and certainly, in this context, we would see so many more teachers kind of adopt these kind of cheap and interesting ideas. And by observation, I'm just going to editorialize that you play down a lot the amount of actual. You tend not to take much credit for the amount of teaching that you've added to this game. Often, when you talk about it, you describe it just like, "Oh, we just play this game," but every time we
There's a
talk about
lot
it,
of
you've got,
instruction going on. It looks like a
yeah,
math
you've added a
class, but
lot of stuff.
Monopoly is
Yeah.
the reward. Yeah.
Right. So can you talk a little bit? I know that Common Core's created a lot of tension, but can you also talk a little bit about, if you could kind of wave a magic wand and get all of your fellow teachers to do something
Uh-huh.
here, based on what you know, what would you do differently? How would you change the system that you're in?
Okay. Um, First of all, there's so much validity to gamification concepts that teachers are already doing, that they're already using in their classroom with their motivational reward systems. If they just became aware of gamification concepts, the psychology behind it from Lazaro and Kusevsky and Bartle and all of that, and then analyze their own uh, classroom management motivation systems, for example, status being so powerful and giving away things being so expensive and the least effective. It is so validating everything I already was using in my own classroom management and motivation systems. If teachers were just made more aware how to use gamification concepts throughout their whole school day, not just in math, then I think that their classroom instruction will drastically improve because kids will be all the more engaged. Gamification is not just using a game in your classroom. It's also for educators. It's also how you manage your classroom. I manage my classroom with class-wide points, team points, individual points in cash, rewards and privileges and status for those who really rise to the top, and um, all this all these gamification concepts teachers are already using. If they just became more aware of how to fine tune what they're already doing using what you and your team is promoting, I think instruction will drastically improve. Then if they want to level up and use games, actual games like Monopoly in the classroom, by all means, Monopoly is phenomenal for teaching the interpersonal skills, the financial literacy, and the math, from mental math all the way through actuary level expected value kind of stuff with high level probability. Um, so that would be
What's
great.
been the What's been the toughest thing for you? What's been the like kind of hardest lesson or most difficult challenge for you in this whole process of building this kind of amazing curriculum and this amazing result around your Monopoly math class?
Trying to teach everything, um, the standards, the old No Child Left Behind standards that my state required, and now the new Common Core standards that my state is requiring. There's no way you can teach everything. And so to really delve deep into something and really uh, learn something long term, kids need to investigate and explore and experience the learning and find meaning and value behind it. And Monopoly and gamification allows that to happen, but there's such time pressure with state testing and punishments. The whole No Child Left Behind and now Common Core and the whole system is the complete reverse of gamification. It's all punishment, no reward for teachers. If we don't do our job, we're punished. If we do our job, great. We get to keep our job. You know, there's no
Right.
reward for being awesome. You know, there's no levels or status or leaderboards or anything like that. Um,
Ha-
and so, yeah,
Has it been hard to convince was it hard to, or is it still hard to convince your management team, the school board and the school system to allow you to do this? I mean, this is pretty different from the way that most people
yeah, this is
teach.
very,
And despite,
very different. Yeah.
yeah.
The
Can you
key
talk to some of
is
those challenges?
the only thing you need is the proof is in the pudding. You need those state test scores. Some kind of, we're in a world of standardized tests. And once you have awesome state test scores, you just say, see principal, see school board, this works. And then they, at least in my experience, they will not only be hands off, they will say, how can we duplicate this? How can we encourage more of this? So now I get to teach this before school. I get to teach this on Saturday schools. My team wants to use some of this as well. And so um, you need to show on standardized tests that it works. And if you cannot show that, your cause is hopeless and you're actually could be in trouble for doing this. So make sure that what you're doing is effective. Otherwise, you can have all the evidence in the world to say that it works. Um, but if it doesn't improve state test scores or standardized test scores, you're going to be shut down in a heartbeat.
Ken made this comment in the chat, and thanks for this comment, Ken, about context and talking about how math skills certainly live in context. And I'll say, for my part, I always had a very good kind of natural ability with math, and whenever I look at Common Core problems, they are often written the way that my brain kind of processes math. So I may have done better in math class actually in the current regime versus the way
Okay.
that I was taught, though my math skills are pretty good. But one question that I have for you is now, I know you spend most of your time thinking about how to do this with kids, but if we took a step back and just thought about sort of generally, can you imagine using Monopoly or Monopoly-like context to teach adults? And if we were going to use these ideas to teach adults numeracy, and certainly contextual or conceptual math, what do you think the context should be? Like, can we actually use Monopoly to do this? I mean, is real estate good enough of a construct?
Uh, I certainly can teach adults as well, and I have taught adults at a local college as a community
Oh,
enrichment
cool.
class, um, and it was very beneficial for them. They did not sign up for the class to learn math. They signed up for the class to get better at Monopoly, but I know for a fact during the class their mental math skills, their negotiation skills, their return on investment, resource management skills, um, drastically improved. And they walked out of that class a better mathematician, a better business person, better financial literacy, and better negotiator. So they were being highly educated. As far as they knew, they can now go whoop their family at Monopoly.
Honestly, I think it's criminal that Hasbro doesn't have a $1,000 version of Monopoly that has your curriculum in it. One
Uh,
last question for you, Tim. They're undercharging. If it can do all of these things, they're undercharging.
well,
One last
I'd love for
question.
them to watch this video.
Yes, we'll send it to them. We'll send them the URL. One last question for you. I think I know your answer to this, but I'm really curious. How important is fun actually to learning in your
It
experience?
is
And
so
remember,
important.
yeah, I mean, you're a
Go ahead.
math teacher, so
Yeah.
I'm sure every single one of us had a math teacher, or most of us, that would have probably disagreed with you, but I'm really curious to hear your thoughts about
If math class is not fun in some way, if math class is not fun, they're not going to learn at the highest level that they could have learned. And so find what is fun. It's going to be attached to that particular teacher's passion, or you should know your audience. It'll be tied into the audience, the student's passion, and inject that into the classroom. You can find some Common Core standards or some required standards that you're supposed to teach in your curriculum somehow. And even if you don't use Monopoly or games as the lessons, the classroom should be gamified. You know, have that leaderboard of the top 10 kids. Have special privileges for those who improve from one test to the next. Have, the opportunity for the class to earn enough points to buy no homework for the night. All those things happen in my classroom, and the kids love it. It's fun. And that's what all teachers should do, is somehow gamify their classroom, because there's so many teachers already doing that. They just don't even know that they're doing gamification. Unfortunately, they're not doing it as well as they could if they just educated themselves from your resources.
I think that's amazing advice, and I really hope, Tim, that we can convince you at least, if not, you can't talk about the cool stuff you're going to do with the Monopoly curriculum. Maybe we can at least get you to write up your basic classroom gamification curriculum. That would be so exciting. And for folks that want to follow you, you can follow Tim on Twitter at Tim Van Monopoly on Twitter, and we put the URL up. Just follow him. A whole bunch of us have already followed you out of the chat today. We put the link up to your talk from 2012. Hopefully, we'll get a chance to see you again really soon.
Yeah, I'd
Thank you
love
so
to
much, Tim.
come visit you again another time. Thank you, Gabe.
Great, that would be fantastic. Thank you, Tim Vandenberg. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. I'm Gabe
Thank
Zuckerman.
you.
This has been another episode of the Gamification Revolution webcast. Come join me at a live workshop in New York City on November the 13th. You can find out more about that at gamification.co. See you all next week. Thanks. In the meantime, keep
Bye.
having fun, everyone. Bye-bye.